All right. Looks like we're live once again. Welcome back to Kicking the Seat. We're here to talk about Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, which came out last weekend. Did, I guess, moderately well. Okay enough to get a sequel. I don't know. It had a relatively low budget, but also had a middling kind of opening weekend. And then the second weekend, unfortunately, I had to get onto this box office talk, but I think it's going to get stomped like a mushroom by the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Boy.
Uh,
I don't
yeah.
know. It might
Are
still
you
hold
kidding
its.
me?
Yeah, well.
Mario made like $40 million yesterday on a Wednesday.
Was it technically released yesterday?
Yeah, I saw it yesterday.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we're going to actually be talking about that next week. Yeah, so I say all that because I'm hoping that people do go by the word of mouth, because it's generally gotten some.
Yeah.
A lot of the ads are like 90% Rotten Tomatoes, and I've heard a lot of people speak very highly of it, and you're going to hear more of that this evening, I think. But it is a movie I'm pulling for, mostly because I thought it was charming and fun, and I hope it gets a sequel because I'd like to spend more time in this world, and that's not something I was really expecting going in. So who am I? I'm Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have David Fowley of Keeping It Real and Jeff York of The Establishing Shot. We just got done talking about The Mandalorian, episode 6 of season 3. So now we're going to talk about something really worthwhile and entertaining and good.
We're gonna roll the dice and see how it goes.
Yes. I did not. Okay. I'm glad you brought that up, David, because I am a sucker for novelty popcorn tins. As you can see behind me, there's the Top Gun Maverick one from last year. I never can get this right, but I'm pointing right at it, the metal bucket.
Oh, okay.
The one for Dungeons and Dragons was a giant 20-sided dice that your popcorn could come in if you went to an AMC theater. Now, it included popcorn, but they wanted $34.99 for that thing. Yeah. I was like, no, I can't do it.
Isn't there like a block, like question mark one from Mario Brothers or something? Oh boy, he got it, didn't he?
Maybe.
Jeez. Is that metal too?
Yes, but that was only $15.
Maybe the other one took more to
That's
make.
a bargain.
It is. Now, in fairness, a friend of mine on Facebook and in real life, who's a big D&D fan, he saw the movie, loved it, bought the popcorn thing, and it does have a hinged top, so it's like it's not just a bucket; it's actually a container. He actually put, I assume he washed it out, but he put his D&D dice into it. He used it as a D&D dice container, and he has a lot of D&D dice. So, what is this movie? David Fowley.
Oh, geez, I knew it. Knew it.
If you want, you can pass. You can level up to a mage 6. I don't play D&D.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, neither do I. It probably means nothing. And there's probably some D&D people out there watching who are screaming at us right now. Be like, you can't level up to a mage 6. Sorry. David, tell us about Honor Among Thieves, if you would be so kind, sir.
There's a prison. There's wizards, there's a shapeshifter, there's bad wizards, there's a little bit of, I guess, barbarian type folks, and magic, and some dungeons, some dragons. But overall, it's basically about a quartet of thieves. Well, it starts out as a quintet, I guess. Or maybe in a sextet.
Hey, this is a family show.
I know. But it's basically, there's basically these thieves who need to. Yeah, see, I don't want to give too much away. Anyways, they have to go on a journey.
I'm going to create a safe space for us, David.
All right.
Here you go.
Okay, so they have to go on a journey in order to rescue or reunite a father and a daughter. The father is one of the thieves, and along the way, there's some revelations, some deception, some very, very much some clever comedy, and also some surprising, poignant character moments. And actually, I think it's pretty much filmed in like Iceland and Scotland, and great scenes, great scenery. So overall, are there threats? Yes, there's threats. Like I said, there's dragons, there's evil wizards, there's pompous opportunists, and it's a fun time.
It is a fun time, and it's weird because I felt early on, I was like, I'm not sure if this is all going to work, because it felt, and I feel like this might have been the pitch. Maybe we're going to have Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to forget that abomination from with Jeffrey Irons that came out 20 years ago. We're going to make it a fun Guardians of the Galaxy meets, medieval times essentially, or Lord of the Rings, and we're just going to have fun. I thought the fun element of it was a little bit too forced, because as much as I love Chris Pine, he's not exactly Chris Pratt, and Pratt has kind of a naturalism to his comedy, whereas Pine, it felt like he was called upon to be a little bit Star-Lord, but he's almost more mature than that in his, I don't know, just his essence. I'm getting a little esoteric here.
Yeah.
So the initial scenes I thought were a little bit too try hard, but very quickly, as we get into more of him as a character and as a father and as this guy who's always, he's the kind of the schemer, the guy who comes up with all the plans, and he's got different people on his team to take care of the the heavy lifting. Literally in the case of Holga, his right hand, his kind of woman at arms, played by Michelle Rodriguez. I thought they made a great duo. But yeah, this movie really, it won me over pretty quickly, and I was excited. I didn't feel like I was watching an IP driven, like this is just to build an entire like universe or series of kind of soulless adventures. I really felt like I was a kid back in the 80s again, watching a brand new adventure movie.
More RPG than IP.
Yes, there you go. Here the thing is, when you say RPG, I know it stands for role-playing game, but maybe it's because I played too much Metal Gear as a kid. I can only hear rocket-propelled grenade. I'm like, no, we don't want to have any of that in this movie.
I wouldn't mind.
No. Wow. Mark, I'm glad. Three-Stitch the Rogue. I love it. We should have all come up with Dungeons and Dragons names. I feel like a heel.
That's what I was named after. My parents named me David Fowley after.
Fowley. Right. He's from the clan of owls.
That's right. That's right. It's in my name.
That's right. You're cosplaying as the owl bear tonight.
That's right. That's right.
No.
And Jeff York is from the land of New Amsterdam.
Oh.
And I am
He's
Ian
from
of
Yorkshire.
Simmons. No.
Yorkshire.
At best I can maybe haul out my Hugh Grant imitation and say, as far as I know, when the towers went down, nobody made calls of hate.
That's right.
It's always there.
That's love, actually.
That's love, actually. Dungeons and Dragons and tablets of
If you will.
bringing people back from the dead. Anyway,
I gotta blink a lot more. And,
and stammer quite a bit.
like you're doing this is like a carryover from the last episode of the previous live stream. You're doing part Hugh Grant, part Christopher Lloyd.
I could have been the Prime Minister.
Oh my gosh, what have I wrought? Mark,
is this the dodgy part of town? Okay. Good king wants this lost looked out. Anyways,
oh gosh, there's a Hugh Grant joke from about 30 years ago that I can't tell on a live stream. Maybe I'll tell you after we go off, but it has to do with the certain incident he had when he got in trouble with the law.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mark,
flipping those pancakes.
Our resident. I don't want to out you here, but you are our resident D&D expert.
Okay, maybe. I know. I mean, I've played a number of rounds, and I have many friends who are into it. My kids love it. They're really heavy into it. So,
and this is why I want to get your opinion. I'm glad you could join us tonight for many reasons, but it's always a pleasure to have you. But I figure you're kind of our resident source material expert. What expectations did you have going into Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, and then coming out of it? Do you feel like it honors the game? Is it kind of game adjacent? Does it have nothing to do with it except it's just kind of IP, and we're over here saying, "Oh, this is great," but because we're a bunch of normies?
No. It was great for all the D&D fans that I talked to. They felt the same way I did. Even my son, my oldest son, who plays regularly, he plays D&D, and we play RPG as well, other role-playing games. But going into it, there was a very low bar. It's kind of like the Super Mario Brothers. I haven't seen it yet, going tomorrow.
Oh boy.
But there's a very low bar as far as film version goes, because the last Dungeons and Dragons, it was like people looked at the cover of the book and said, hey, we can make a movie off of that, but never actually cracked the book. These guys not only know the source material, are fans of the source material, they made the cast play an adventure or two with the actual D&D game to get familiar with the game. Yes, they actually GM'd. Everybody wants to see a video of this. They'd love to see a video.
They made the cast play it?
Yeah, they made
that'll
the cast
be on the Blu-ray.
Yeah, they made the cast play a game of Dungeons and Dragons so they could at least be familiar with the way the game was. Watching this and these characters, as much as kind of goofy it is, this felt like you were watching the imagination of a group around a table playing, because they act like player characters. They're not acting like characters of a fantasy story. They're acting like people controlling characters of a fantasy story, of a role-playing game, is how you look at this, because this group is having fun, which is what you do. You've got quips, you've got maybe a little more modern references than you expect. You have people making mistakes, if anything, for the sake of making mistakes. The whole bridge scene where they set it up, it might seem like just a throw-in gimmick, but that shit happens when you play. You have someone who just decides to Leroy Jenkins the shit right into, Leroy, just run right into the adventure or not pay attention to what is being told to them. This really is one of the closest things I've seen to a accurate imagining of D&D, not only of how to play it and what you're imagining it, but the world that they picked, from the races to the spell casting to the type of spells they pick to the creatures, all came from the source material or are only slight variations. Even the locations in the map where they talk about Baldur's Gate and the coast and all of that is from the source material. These folks did their homework. They are fans of it. And on the end of the day, you come out of it where they managed to make a movie that not only entertains folks who may not be familiar with it, because it's just a fun adventure movie, but you get that extra layer of enjoyment when you get the fans of the game going, oh, I know that spell. The way the casting is done, the way the dragons are, the way that final battle is a battle at the end of Dungeons and Dragons. And that's why a lot of people are enjoying it, especially the people who play the game, because this is what you wanted out of a movie version of Dungeons and Dragons, is what we get. And from the trailer did not do it justice, because it made it seem more of like as just really kind of cheesy comic silly. But once you get into it and see the context of the story outside of just the quips that they put in, there's a story in here that builds, just like in an adventure you're at. You start small and it goes bigger and bigger, and suddenly you find yourself in a massive battle with a very high-level wizard to save a town or a universe. That's how those campaigns build. So it was exciting to watch this, because you enjoy it on a number of levels, and to see them take care in something where the jokes are funny, but it's not making fun completely. And if it is, they know the material. So the jokes they're making are not mean-spirited or going, haha, look at the geeks. Right. These are geeks laughing at each other. It's why Polacks come up with the best Polak jokes. Okay. It just, but sorry.
No, I think that's a very interesting point, Mark, is that this movie, it is a big studio, big kind of IP, effort, but it doesn't feel like that. But it also doesn't feel like so many kind of remakes and sequels of things are constantly trying to deconstruct everything and oh, isn't this so campy and cheesy, and it's a dumb role-playing game. This movie takes itself seriously, but it's also lighthearted and in the spirit of fun and adventure, that you feel like, hey, we're going to get friends together, we're going to play a game, kind of like you said. I want to just pull over and show a comment here from RJB40. Knowing nothing about the game or the movie, would this movie be worth seeing? I would absolutely say yes. Now, I don't think we've gotten all the high-level opinions around the Zoom room here, the StreamYard, but I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. My family did as well. my 5-year, or yeah, almost 6. My 5-year-old is going to be popping on in a few minutes to tell us what he thought of the film. But yeah, it's telling that after we were done watching the movie, we had to go to Target to pick up a birthday present for one of my kids' friends. We stopped by the toy section, of course, and they have like Target has the giant like wall of board games and stuff, and a lot of them are like kind of the novelty, like my gosh, not Cards Against Humanity and all these kind of like gag party games. But they had a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons stuff, not necessarily movie tie-ins, but they had like actual the books and the board games and stuff. And my eldest picked up the Dungeons and Dragons. It was weird because I think he picked up the starter kit, but it wasn't the kit that he should have started with it, or he picked up the one that he should have started with. We got him Dungeons and Dragons a couple of years ago, and it was so complicated we couldn't get through the first thing. And my wife said, "Oh, this is actually the second thing you get after you get the first thing that we didn't get him." So he's like, "I would love to play this now," because that movie was pretty fun. So we put it on his wish list. And then my youngest was like, "Can I play Dungeons and Dragons?" Like, yeah, you probably should learn how to read first, buddy. But the cool thing is, a lot of these, kind of IP movies are meant to sell products. The product that this is selling isn't a video game or other movies of its kind or toys. It is, good old-fashioned role-playing game, something you interact with other people in a physical space, to kind of build imagination and community. I thought that was just really cool. So yeah, my vote is go see Dungeons and Dragons. It sounds like I'm wrapping up the show, but I'm not.
All right, good night.
RJB40, I would say as a normie, having no knowledge about the game, yeah, definitely check it out. So Jeff, what did you think of Dungeons and Dragons?
Well, I agree with you, and I would give the same answer to RJB, and I think it's a great question. I watched this and all the creatures and sort of, again, the lore that's there, I appreciate it. I don't know anything about it. I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. I know a little bit of it just peripherally from having friends when I was growing up who have played it, and I was aware of a movie that was done before. But I could watch this and go, well, that's a fun creature, and this is a fun trope, and I'm sure this is all to do with the game, and that's great. But I don't think you have to have all that knowledge to come in and enjoy this, because I think it sets it up pretty well. The relationships, to me, are the key here between these characters. It almost played more like, dare I say, something like a caper movie, a little bit of Ocean's 11 in a certain way, more than necessarily trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy. Though I'm sure the elevator pitch was, it's Guardians of the Galaxy, except with Captain Kirk. The other Chris, you can just see the Hollywood dummies needing to spoon fed him like that. But I think the filmmakers and the people putting this film together did the one thing that I think is the key to most stories, and whether you're a big fan of the core stuff or not, does it have heart? And I think there is a connection here. He's looking for his long lost daughter and all this stuff. And meanwhile, during the whole adventure, just like in The Wizard of Oz and all these other things, you realize the family is kind of what I'm making there around me. And these are the people I can connect with. That comes through gangbusters, and yeah, the special effects are fun, and Grant plays a snarky villain, and Michelle Rodriguez is always good, even though she's kind of got the range from A to D, but she plays A to D really, really well. And I really enjoyed it, and I thought I would like to see more of these people, because I think they have a banter. You're right, they don't play too snarky. It's not like they're outside of it, but they also, I think the fun of playing this adventure equals the fun of the people probably playing the board game. And I think that's a similar kind of invested heart or interest in doing stuff with your friends here that comes through here. I also have to say that I think if they did this with less of even the CGI and the special effects, as good as a lot of this was, I think shooting on location gave it something really special. I think just the way they move in the context of places, the way certain people walk versus other people, I think that's character building. I think that's world building. I would almost suggest if they did this again, they don't have to spend quite the coin on it, because I think while that stuff is terrific and sharp and you want some of that, I think it's all that other stuff is that to me struck me as more special, because like I said, I didn't know D&D at all, and I felt like watching these people, I got it, and I didn't feel like I was in the dark.
I want to talk about the special effects, because there is a scene where, and we haven't really talked about the individual characters really, but Simon is a young wizard, and one of the things I thought was cool about this universe is it established that magic isn't really special. You get the feeling that almost anybody can do, some degree of magic. It's just how much you practice it, how in tuned you are. It's almost like the Force, but even more every day.
Or even gambling. It's an acquired skill that you think is like some sort of perceptive specialty, but maybe it's just reading things right.
Right. But Simon is the young wizard who lacks confidence.
Right.
He's essentially doing he's part of the original gang, but they get split up when there's a betrayal. And Edgin, played by Chris Pine, and Holga, who's Michelle Rodriguez's character, they end up in prison for 2 years, locked away in this tower. And then during their parole hearing, Chris Pine goes on this long, extended diatribe about
fun way of getting to the exposition.
It was very good. Yeah, it was very clever.
his family.
Tell us your story.
And it's funny because, and we are in spoiler territory, so RJB, if you're still watching this, I'm not going to give too much away about the overall plot and all the mechanics, but there is just one fun moment because Chris Pine is waiting for this one judge a judge to show up, and you kind of get the feeling that maybe he's bribed him or he knows him or something like that, but it turns out he just wants him to show up because he's like this hawk creature that he's going to push out of a window and use to fly and escape out of the castle,
right,
unbeknownst to him.
It was unnecessary, which was really funny that he didn't have to do that. They were going to let him go.
Right, they got you've been pardoned.
Yeah, so he's like, and that to me, that's the caper part of this too. It's like they plan this big scheme, and then it's like, oh well, that didn't work, or we didn't need that. Well, which is and half of Ocean's 11, right?
Right.
You need a bigger drill. Well, that drill doesn't work.
And I feel like it's taking a genre and it's taking a genre and, like, in this case, fantasy, wizards, fantasy, and like in the hands of somebody like, say, was it Seth Goldberg and Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg? They would just go into like raunchy territory with it, like Your Highness or something. Everybody's smoking weed and there's sex everywhere, whatever. But like what we just described there, that shows the charm and the humor and the adventure, and it right away, it establishes a really kind of intoxicating tone. I will say this, somebody mentioned Chris Pratt. Somebody mentioned Chris Pratt. I mean, Pine just kind of confirmed. I could probably take Pine over Pratt. I think Pine has a lot more range, and when it comes to like heavy kind of poignant stuff, he really delivers.
Yes.
And you really feel just in even that backstory when he's telling it right there, and even some of the later on in some of the flashbacks where we see it with his wife. He's still a guy who's feeling deeply regretful and hurting for the loss that he has and the loss that he feels responsible for his daughter. And I just don't think, at least not that I've seen, I don't think Pratt could do something like that. And I think as far as charm, on the charm meter, Pine is, way up there more than Pratt. But
yeah, I mean, it's just that kind of
I know,
roguish, snarky character. I think that was my main comparison. But you're right. I mean, Chris Pratt, there is more of an emotional range here, which you're not really expecting. I mean, he plays the what is that, the lute?
He even sings.
He sings, and it's a nice distraction. I was getting some kind of like Bollywood vibes off of that. I'm like this, because I was talking. I did an interview with Indian Institute of Technology in Madras last weekend, talking about the differences between like Indian cinema and American cinema. Like, I just love that you're not afraid to have like musical numbers break out in the middle of this narrative. And I'm watching Dungeons and Dragons. We get it, I think, twice. I'm like, this is wonderful. It serves the story, and it's funny, and it's also nice to listen to.
And I love that, like, he there's a whole section there once the team is established, there's a whole section there. It's like, so what do you bring to the table? Well, I'm a planner. I plan things, and it's not like he has a sword on him or anything. He just carries that loot in the back of his, almost like a sword. It's like this guy. I guess it's funny because he's a chronic failure who's also a chronic optimist in a way.
By the way, can I just jump on the bandwagon of lauding Chris Pine for a second? My favorite actor of all time is William Holden, and I've always said that there's no actor who I think can play what William Holden played, because he was often playing the third kind of part, the third lead in it, and it was often the least colorful or the less broad part, whether it's Country Girl, or Sabrina, even Bridge on the River Kwai. He's kind of a little bit of the straighter guy, while Alec Guinness and the Commandant get to do all the big sort of heavy lifting. But he holds the film together, and there's always been with Holden, I think, while he's handsome and got this sort of leading man quality to him, there's something about him that maybe, I don't know if it's his background or it took a while for him to get sort of become a big star, but there's a wisdom and there's a sadness in him. And I think Chris Pine has that too. And I thought that's why Wonder Woman worked, not so much because Gal Gadot was good, which he was, but I think the Steve Trevor character could have been a bland wash. And yet Chris Pine, when he is realizing that he's won and he's going to have to crash the plane, and that realization of his face, like, shit, I won, but I'm going to be dead in a couple of seconds. And what do I do with that? And it's great, but then I'm going to miss Diane and stuff. It broke my heart. And I think there's that quality with him too, even in something like this, where you can see he would be aching for his family. You can see that he would have enough for Rodriguez's character to hang around, or Holga to hang around him. There's just something more behind his eyes than there is with Chris Pratt, who, just plays like kind of a shallow frat boy who realized he was funny in junior year.
Well, and also to his credit, he's one of the reasons that I think Wonder Woman 1984 actually, kind of worked. A very unpopular opinion, but no, but what I wanted to get to with the Simon character, and I'm glad we talked about Chris Pratt, but Justice Smith plays Simon as the young, unconfident wizard who has a crush on. Was she a fawn? I think Sophia Lillis's daughter.
Shapeshifter.
Yeah. That's right. But she's got the horns right coming out of her head. So
I think they're
the
called
girls with the ears. They always have them now and stuff.
I feel like they're called Thielings or something, or
Carnival Row and all those. It's like the new exotic, right?
Right. But I think but he's an interesting character. I think like one of the great things about this movie is it's 2 hours and 14 minutes. Yes, so it's a bit long, but that's partially because we get to spend a lot of time with these characters, feeling like we get to know them. Not exotic backstories on all of them,
right?
But we get just enough to know that by the end we're rooting for them because we feel like we actually know them.
Right.
This whole thing, I'm getting on this long tangent, going back to the special effects, because there's a scene where he gets this. It was a helmet that he had to acquire, very questy type of stuff, and he puts it on, and he goes into this realm where he's talking to one of his ancestors. It's like one of the elders, and he has to convince him to let him like take control of his magical abilities, and he just keeps getting his ass handed to him because his elder thinks that he's disgraced the family name because he's a pathetic wizard who can't do anything.
Right.
But when he goes into this realm, it reminded me like the good version of the spaghetti character effects from Doctor Strange, like when Reed Richards gets turned into that, the spaghetti, essentially. Everything just starts kind of melting and turning almost like an underwater quality. And I feel like it's an effect that I haven't quite seen before in movies. And I was in awe because I feel like I see enough of these big budget blockbusters that everything starts to look like an After Effects plugin. There was some real artistry in that scene. So I was invested in what was going on with these two characters who turned out to be one, and the environment in which they're having these conversations.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they did a great job, not just in visual effects, but production design, and nothing to me at least ever really felt like a set.
Right.
I mean, obviously there's some aerial shots that like, okay, but where they're coming up on the kingdom or whatever. But still, I mean, it's not ever going to feel as say well lived in as say like a Game of Thrones episode, because those are actual places, and you've spent enough time with each episode investing in, oh, these are real places. But I at no point was I ever like taken out because of the visual effects, or because of any kind of like, I don't know, corners being cut anywhere here and there. But yeah, even like from the beginning when we talked about that prison escape, I like the how the different judges, like there's like a dragon judge, and there's it's I forget what the other one was, but there was the female, and then the older guy, and so it was just right away it just establishes, okay, this is, I mean, you could almost see like, all right, there's this wing hawked character, and it would almost be like, okay, I'm going to be that piece in the role-playing game or whatever. It's like it fits.
He was an NPC is what he was. What surprised me is either it's really good CGI, but I think they used far more practical effects than you might have expected in here. You got the Hawkman, you got the dinosaur. Even if they were embellished by CGI, they used practical effects quite a bit in here, which helped. But the special effects in this, in all honesty, are some of the best special effects we've seen out of any of the blockbuster films we've gotten, I would say, this year even. They took some care with it. The dragons looked far better than what I thought they were. You get that whole scene with the fat dragon.
That was awesome.
Yes, that was great.
Which is hilarious. It looks great. It's got some tension, and it served the plot, And that's the
and those are unique characters too. They did a bunch of very interesting monsters that I know are true to the game, but there was a freshness to a lot of that, I thought, as well.
Yeah, even that lion with the tentacle snapping.
Yes.
thing.
That was like the panther.
That's an actual creature.
I'm sure it is.
His exactual ability as well. I forgot the name offhand, but yeah, the mimic with the chest where she grabs it, that's an actual mimic. That's actually in the game, shows up quite a bit, used by a lot of DMs to help scare them. And what's even greater is the cameo they put in. If you're from the 80s and you're a D&D fan, you will recognize the cameo that they had in there that was more than just background characters. You have the original cast from the animated series in there.
Really?
Where the little kid with the barbarian who grabs the axe out of the chest, you had the guy with the yellow sash, you had the girl in purple.
Oh yeah.
That whole cast,
the other players in the arena.
Arena. You had the animated group guys.
Yeah. Fun.
I thought there was something to that, but
and the special effects, even within that maze and everything, all of it looked far sharper than what we've seen in like
Attack of the Clones. I agree.
In an IP, but I mean in other IPs, and I think that's what kind of separates this from just being kind of the cheat, is that you still have a lot of these tropes and things that we've seen, but it's where you can tell the filmmakers took care with this film, knowing what they had, and they did it just right. I mean, all the spells are from the game, the way they cast them and everything, but the way they look, like her going through the whole thing with the wagon and the portal was
cool. That was great.
That was your Ocean's 11 type stuff with the heist.
Exactly.
Their staff. Yeah.
But
but you also have, but even beyond, like, we're talking a lot about great production values and the ties to the game and stuff. I would argue that these filmmakers got the sense of the idea of strategy. Like, you actually see these characters stop and think and have to reason it out and listen and kind of scratch their chins a little bit before, as opposed to knowing everything all the time and saving time. And they don't do that here, to your point, Ian. They go on a little bit longer, 2 hours and 50 minutes, but those moments are the ones that give it, I think, real genuine character in life, because that's where the relationships are. Because if it's just people talking on top of one another, it just becomes rat-a-tat dialogue that has no meaning other than, well, we've got to save time. But here, that's why you cast Michelle, because she always does that. I don't have a lot of lines, but I'm going to make the most of them by looking at you and thinking before I speak. And I love that.
I really want to know how that scene where she goes back to her ex in the village, how that was filmed, because, like, I know she said she's an A to D actor and everything, but it's like, how do you not crack up, doing that? I mean, that was just.
Look, we talked in our Mandalorian live stream a little bit ago about, like, how not to do celebrity cameos. this is how to do a celebrity
That's how to do it.
cameo.
Yeah, right.
Because this, and again, this Bradley Cooper shows up in this movie as Helga's ex, flame,
Mhm.
and it is
Uncredited, not an
Uncredited.
Right.
right, but it is, for me, it is the epitome of a celebrity cameo. It's
Mhm.
something
It is,
where
it is,
if
yeah.
you get it, you
Yep.
get it. If you don't,
Right.
then it's like, oh, it's just a regular, random
Right.
guy.
I was
But-
almost like, is that really Bradley Cooper?
Yeah.
Is that,
He
I mean,
looked
there you
like
think-
he was auditioning for Schindler's List 2 or something. I mean, he was like so gaunt. Jeez. But and help me out here. At the end of the movie, I don't think I've heard anything about this, and I haven't looked it up, but there's a king at the end of the film. Like he's got like a big white beard, and I think he's awarding them something or whatever.
Mhm.
I swear to God, I thought that was Viggo Mortensen in like old age makeup.
Oh, I didn't
Was that
pick up on
supposed to
that.
be somebody, or is that I don't know if that was actually him or if it was some other actor that were meant to
I didn't
like,
pick
oh,
up on
it's
that.
him. But that would have been really fun.
That'd be great.
But yeah, the whole bit with the portals I thought was very
Yeah.
playful, and they use it very creatively. It's a gimmick where you can open up a portal, and as long as you can see where you want to come out the other side, you can kind of like visualize it and have a separate door open up.
Very,
on
very
that-
Kurt
in that
Wagner.
place. Oh yeah, Bamf. But
Yeah.
and if you can't see where you're coming out, then you have to devise other ways that you
Right.
can see the way to get in. And they use that with the fat dragon. They use that with the bridge scene, which I thought this is the bit where they do kind of take a loving dig at Dungeons and Dragons and the complications of the rules and the dice rolling and all that stuff, where Zenk, who we haven't talked about, played by Roger Jean Page, who I was informed by my wife was on Bridgerton.
Mhm.
Yeah, he
And
was
now
the
I feel-
breakout
He's
star.
the sexy guy from Bridgerton.
And now I
Yeah.
feel like I have to go watch Bridgerton of all things, because I thought he was great in this movie.
Mhm.
But yeah, he's leading them across. It's very Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, like leading them across this complicated bridge with footfalls and stuff to get to this other thing. And he's laying out all these rules, like you have to take 3 steps and then 2 steps to the left, but you can't
Yes.
take a right step. He
Yes.
goes on for like 2 minutes, and then Simon like bumps a thing and disintegrates the bridge. I mean, that part's pretty much in the trailer, but it still works in the moment.
Yeah.
It's even better in the context. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
But I think that's a scene where it's like, yes, we know this game is overly complicated. It takes forever to play these games because of all these rules and stuff. So we're going to kind of take a little, poke in the ribs, but we're not making fun of it. I love
Yeah.
that spirit.
Yeah.
I also, getting back to the Guardians of the Galaxy dynamic, this is where I had to compartmentalize Zank, because his gimmick is, I mean, aside from being the dashing, brave kind of hero that has honor where the thieves kind of don't, he also does not understand irony or sarcasm.
Yeah, that was funny.
And that's very Drax the Destroyer. Like there were so
Kinda,
many
yeah,
parts in
yeah.
here. I was like,
Mhm.
oh no, Dave
Mhm.
Bautista, get out of my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that until just now. Yeah, and I think he brought a great a balance, or I guess great variety to this group once he was
did.
introduced. And I read somewhere that ending where he walks away, where he walks over the boulder.
Yeah.
That was totally him. That was not in the script, and they just kept it in there. And,
Now, did they improvise the reactions to that walk?
I don't know about that. Maybe they did. Yeah, because you have to rehearse that, in some extent. But that's. I mean, I could see that even that being improvised, because everybody felt just so loose and willing to do anything in this movie. Honestly,
It
yeah.
felt, to your point, David, a lot of times movies that I consider bad, one thing I hear about people is like, oh, it looked like they were having so much fun making it. And my
Most Hal
reaction to
Needham movies.
well,
Hell,
I'll say that about Ocean's
They had a
12.
lot more fun than we did.
Well, I would say that when I'm watching
Yeah,
those
12
kinds of
was bad.
films, yeah, I'm like, I wish it's great that they had a good time. I wish they'd been thinking about whether or not I'm going to have a good time.
I mean,
watching
that's
this, right?
any Adam Sandler movie where he's going on a vacation.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
yes. But to your point, it did feel loose and natural, but it felt like they were having a good time and that they cared that they were doing something that would be genuinely, I hate to say it, but like 4-quadrant entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing with the Zhenk, was that improvised? Man, I
Yeah,
really want
I
to
know,
know.
right?
But
I mean,
what I
yeah.
loved about, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm gonna make my point. Don't let me forget Han Solo. But David, make your
Oh,
point.
Han Solo. Yeah, I mean, it feels like everything is. There's nothing. At least I didn't feel like anything was wholly predictable. I mean, you knew that they were going to reunite and all these things, but I felt like it felt kind of like a role playing game where everything is kind of the next thing is going to be very situational, and you're going to have to, pardon my, phrasing, but you're going to have to roll with it. And really, because these characters really had to improvise on their feet. I'm not talking about like the actors, but the actual in that situation, because one plan doesn't work out and you got to come up with another iffy plan. And also kind of pure luck, some of these things work. And that's kind of like how the game works. Yes, you could strategize, but sometimes just luck wins or is in your favor. And, again, I haven't played D&D, and I was way too confusing when I was young. It was way too confusing for me.
It's gotten a lot better. It's gotten a lot better altogether with it.
Yeah.
Well, there's one other thing too that I think is a nice trend that at least this year it seems to be happening in movies. I'm not sure if it's because we've been through some dark times with COVID and everything else, but there's a lot of fun in this movie, and there was a lot of fun in Megan and some of these other things where it's nice to see them realizing that, you can still do heavy stories, and there's the family, regrets and all that kind of stuff too. But it is kind of this really rollicking good time, and it doesn't have to be so heavy and angsty. And it really is kind of, I think, to your point, for quadrant entertainment, that everybody can kind of laugh and get on the same page. Again, I don't know D&D like Mark does, and yet for me, none of that felt like an obstacle to me, because I thought, okay, they're explaining this world, and I kind of get that this is sort of strategizing, which I know you have to do in the game, and of course all the weird characters and levels that they have to get through and stuff, but it's very accessible because it's so much fun, and these people are having fun, and I'm having fun, and then there's wit and intelligence to it. And when you put in Hugh Grant as the villain, and he's made such a good late twist in his career of becoming this really terrific sort of baddie, it just that's a motive of fun right there. They don't cast just some snarling British guy who, like Charles Dance, who was a great villain, but he has no fun in the role. Hugh Grant's fun.
Yes,
and unexpected, so
yeah, that's right.
And the writing is really sharp for him too. He gets a lot of these great kind of heel lines, like
yes,
early on when Edgin and Holga kind of reunite with him, because the whole deal is, initially, you're right, they're a group of thieves, and he was one of them.
Right.
And he was the con man. If we were talking A-team, he'd be face. Yeah. But he also teamed up with Sophina, who is a witch, to kind of double cross the group and essentially gain riches and power in this realm. So when Edgin and Holga go back to this kingdom, they find out that Forge, who is Hugh Grant's character's name, which is a great clue as to can you trust this guy? His name is Forge. He's been taking care of Kira, who is Edgin's daughter, who is her mother died because of Edgin's actions, which comes out in the backstory. But when they go to see him, and he reveals that he doesn't want anything to do with them, and he's going to have them sink into the floor, and it's just this one great why is like, oh, you're in the floor. Like, it's kind of unexpected. Like, I didn't know that was going to happen. But I want the Han Solo thing I want to get to, which was a really nice surprise, because I had my critic hat on, as I do when I watch anything, and sometimes it's a very heavy hat to wear and not any fun. But there was the bit where Zank, he's kind of gone through his adventure with Edgin and Holga.
You knew he was coming back. I mean, come on.
Well, but here's the thing. I knew he was coming back, but he didn't really. He shows up at the end of the movie too, and I don't want to get too spoilery with any of this stuff, but he comes back at the end of the movie. But what he doesn't do is have a Han Solo return, where Han Solo takes his money and runs in the original Star Wars from '77. I'm talking, and you think, oh well, he's gotten paid, he's done his part, now he's gonna he's gonna screw off to the under the galaxy, and then at the end he comes back in the darkest hour of the trench run. Right.
That was one in a million.
Yeah. Zank leaves and then he's out of the picture. He does not come back in the darkest moment of the giant arena battle to save the day. He shows up at the end of the movie to kind of like tie up a loose end and, you know, kind of lead to some, you know, sequel possibilities with Hugh Grant's character, I guess. But it was a nice, refreshing moment because, again, this is a giant Hollywood blockbuster movie. They could have taken all the shortcuts with the script and say, oh, now here's the part where the road guy comes back and saves the day. They don't do that here. And there was a couple other points in the movie that I saw this a week ago, so it's not exactly fresh in my head, but there are a couple other moments similar to that where I thought they're going to do this and they don't. They sidestep it or they completely ignore the fact that they could have taken the easy way out. And I really appreciated that here.
Also, sorry, RBJ, but we are talking spoilers. But even to the point where they sort of bookend the film with the fate of Forge.
Yeah.
You know, that they don't do the typical, well, we've got to, you know, totally do away with them or whatever else, but it's done as a kind of a witty bookend to the very first opening scene with
and it was
him.
Pretty funny that
Very funny. Very funny. I think it's funny that they end with a big laugh like that, which is great. I mean, and then you remind you that that's also why you cast Hugh Grant, because he's funny and that works, that plays.
And I think I like that he's still alive, because if they do a sequel, it's possible that he comes back, maybe not as the villain, but as he can at least be a presence. Because I think he's one of the reasons this movie really works. He's so good. Nasty, but so funny and charming at the same time.
Right. Well, I mean,
Mark, you wanted to...
Oh, no, go ahead, David. No,
it almost feels like he like rose to popularity as like somebody like Trump does or something like that, where you know, he's embraced by everybody. He's done so much for the kingdom, but you know, he's more self-serving than anything. And that great scene at the end where there's that balloon and the hither tither thing is, and he's looking out of the portal and money's coming out of the mouth, and
yes,
it's so funny.
He's so horrified that he's losing losing all of his wealth.
Yet the balloon is smiling and laughing, you know.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really appreciate with this final battle is, again, one, it felt like a D&D end of campaign. Like, you've gone through an adventure. You've played this adventure. For us, it's only a couple hours, but you've done this one for like 2 years. You've been building up. And it's not so rule orientated anymore. Now it's very more story driven, depending on who your dungeon master is and who's running the game. It is far more orientated. Even though you have all the rules, you don't have to necessarily use all the rules. But still, stories like this would take maybe a year, maybe, you know, half a year, depending on how they write it. Or this would just be one module to even a bigger moment. And that's where I was going, was I really appreciate the scope they kept this adventure with, because even though you're dealing with a rather big baddie and they're building up to building an army of the dead or whatnot, it's really, they're just saving a town. They're not saving the world like in the previous Dungeons and Dragons from a huge flock of dragons. They have one red wizard who's very powerful. They manage to thwart and piss off, and then they fight at the end, and they manage to roll well. They have their wizard roll well enough to where he can counter the spell, and boom, they finish with one baddie. The baddie didn't get back up suddenly, and suddenly this is epic battle with it. You know, these guys barely held their own with a red wizard, so it still feels like they earned the win, but it didn't go to world-ending scope. It's just an adventure to where they saved the town.
Yeah.
They also played by the rules with that tablet.
Right.
Like, the tablet is not just a MacGuffin. It's actually a thing. And then they make the right choice to use it at the end, which was
it's a
nice
tablet
little touch too.
Right. And we won't exactly talk about what they did.
I'm not going to say
tablet.
We want RBJ to make it to the end.
Right. It's a tablet that can do something very specific. And honestly, at the end, when they use the tablet for the purpose that they end up doing it and not the purpose that was expected,
Exactly.
almost the entire drive of the film, that's all I'll say about it. I feel like, this is Critic Hat guy, I felt like, why did I not see that coming?
I know.
And the reason is because in that moment, I was so like emotionally invested in what was going on. And this is where Michelle Rodriguez goes from possibly A to G.
Yes.
I was like,
she's good. She's very good at what she does. She's just not Streep, you know.
I looked over at my wife, over the heads of our two, you know, not that small children
She was a
anymore.
little teary-eyed.
We were both like, you know,
Oh,
yeah. It
Well,
was
and
really powerful.
It also points to, what is the real quest is for this, golden fleece or the Holy Grail, as it were, the tablet, and some of these other kind of things that tie into that. But the real connection is, a reuniting of family.
Yep.
And it is exactly that. It's just not the family you thought it was going to be.
Well,
Yeah.
and he drops the line in there, which I loved, was how he figured out that he was looking to bring back his wife, not her mother. I mean, you get little lines and moments in this movie that help sell it to make it more than just a comical, haha, look at D&D type of thing. And yeah, his decision at the end, it makes sense.
Mhm.
and
It's
also,
it doesn't just feel contrived like, oh, he's doing this for melodrama. Throughout the whole thing, it makes sense with the way her character interacted always with the young girl. They even give the girl a chance to interact by putting this bracelet on the red wizard when she was hidden. I mean, but the way that those three had the dynamic of interacting, they did it, but they also did something that other modern films seem to not be able to avoid. Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez's characters stay platonic friends throughout this entire thing.
They have no romantic chemistry.
Well, but I mean, honestly,
obvious.
no, there's, I understand where you're coming from, Mark, but that's actually a trope that's been in a lot of modern movies, is the lack of romantic chemistry.
Well,
they're trying to get away from the whole, like, oh, you got a guy and a girl and they're leading people. They have to have
sex. Yeah.
They've been getting away from that for years.
Well,
And
but
it's kind of a sticking point with me. I'm like, can't people just fall in love anymore?
No, but for them, it makes sense with the relationship, because she has no interest. That's what I'm saying, is that they don't force it, I guess, is what I'm saying, is they don't force the relationship because they've been so close and they're connected to his daughter. They're both just, you know,
can still be pals in a situation like this. And I think she knows, he may not know all of her history, but she knows what's transpired with him. So, you would think that, there would be no chance of her like trying to make moves, because she knows that he's still torn about his wife.
He's also way too tall for her. As
As
we discover at the end of the film.
I read in an interview that Michelle Rodriguez bulked up for this role, right? And in the interview, she made an emphasis on the fact that she bulked up and grew out her arm hair.
Oh yeah. That's a statement.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we were talking about kind of character dynamics. This is kind of I want to close out. There was a minor controversy before this came out. The directors gave an interview with, I think, Vanity Fair, and this is the danger of print, because I don't think it was a video or recorded interview I think it was just released on, in print form, where one of them made a crack. I think it was John Francis Daley made a crack about how they really enjoyed emasculating the male characters in their film, and that caused quite a stir, because there has been a trend in a lot of, particularly like Marvel movies and popular entertainment, to bring up the female characters by making them more masculine and making the, sidelining the traditional kind of heroic masculine characters. And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And there was a lot of concern that this was going to be a continuation of that in the film. Now, when I first heard this, I thought, okay, there's no recording of it, and context is key and presentation is key. When I heard that, I thought, you'd be an idiot to say this, just kind of like blurt this out and not back up with anything. I felt it was a joke, possibly a joke picking up on this trend of emasculating the male characters in other, popular franchises. And having watched the film, RJB, I don't know if you've heard any of this stuff or not, and if you're afraid of it, I can rest assured there are no scenes where there's the big hulking macho Schwarzenegger guy going in and kicking butt, but there is a fine balance, I think, in all of the characters, no matter what gender they are in this movie. They are just really cool. They're all kick-ass kind of medieval comedy action heroes. And Chris Pine, I I don't know if he even draws a sword in this movie. He's just got his little like, loot thing, but he uses his brains to get in and out of like these sticky situations. He's also a very tough guy. He's also a very vulnerable guy. And I think if you have any question about what kind of badass adventure you can have in a movie like this, Zank is the guy. I mean, geez, like you're not going to find a tougher dude, but also a more kind of charming and funny because he doesn't understand irony kind of character. Right. It's just so great. So I was happy to see that. It kind of annoyed me because I'm like, again, I don't think this is as big a deal as people are making it out to be. And I was vindicated.
Well, what you also get out of this dynamic is not only Michelle Rodriguez's kind of barbarian character who still hasn't lost femininity, because that could have happened. You've got Chris Pine, who's your leading hero, that you're right, barely picks up a weapon. He's got his loot because he's a thief. He's a rogue. The thing is, it makes sense within the context of his character. But let's look at the other one as well. Your shapeshifter, who's a Tiefling druid. She's having fun, but she's not the crazy off the hook character. She's having fun and she has a wild personality, but she gets a story enough to give you a level to her to where like, okay, her motivation of why she doesn't quite like humans. And even your spellcaster who, in the past, cliche wise, is your comedic timing to where he's so bumbling. I'm thinking back to Krull. I know I'm digging deep, but still Krull, where you're casting the wrong thing constantly or whatnot. This guy is competent. He's a little klutzy. He's a little green.
He's got imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Right. But he's competent and he does do some funny things, but he's not the comic relief, if that makes sense.
And I don't really think anybody is, which is great.
Except maybe Hugh Grant.
Well, yeah.
But I mean, I think what you're saying through all of this is that these characters aren't one note. They're not just filling one lane. They're not, this is the comedy guy. This is the macho guy. This is the sexy gal. This is the butch gal. There's none of that here. They're all much more nuanced, and I think that's part of the good of the film is that the characterizations are more interesting than that.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but when we first saw Doric, Sophia Lillis's character, in action, meaning not when she turned into Owlbear, but when she infiltrated the tower and the castle and everything, it was like, whoa! Not just, but the whole sequence. Like when she was caught by the evil witch, that was crazy because she was like, did the whole like invasion of the body snatchers thing, like whoa, and then she was like, whoa, I got to get out of here, and and she just changed into different creatures and went into different rooms.
Oh, that was so good.
That was amazing, and even the camera work, I was like, wow, this is exciting.
Well, yeah, because the ability she has is out of the book. It's called Wild Shape, and it was fitting the way she did it. But more importantly, what I like is it wasn't just the gimmick. We don't see her turn into the owl bear once and that's it. We don't see her to turn into one thing and then it barely comes up.
Right.
Like you said, this sequence where she's using it is how you would use this ability, and it made sense. And it was a wonderful sequence.
Even when she turned into I think it was a hawk and she's flying away. Yeah. Those arrows, it's like,
yeah, they just kept coming after her.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to wind down here, guys. There is one point of view that we haven't fully experienced on the panel tonight, and that's from a 5-year-old. What does a 5-year-old make of a PG-13
Good question? Do you know
Dungeons and Dragons movie? We happen to have an expert, so please indulge me. We're going to have a few words from my son Luke. A movie yesterday. What did we see?
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, was it? It was Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, right? That was the full title.
Yeah.
We had talked about this movie possibly being scary because it's rated PG-13, which means you're about 5 years too young to watch this movie. Did you know that?
No.
So, but was it scary? Was it okay for little kids to watch, do you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There was only one kind of scary part that I saw you covered your eyes, but you covered them on your own. Me and Mom didn't even have to cover them for you.
That was a surprise.
Yeah. What was the surprise? Without getting spoilery, what happened?
The girl turned into one of the red wizards.
One of the Red Witch, right?
Yeah, the Red
Yeah.
Witch.
That was kind of freaky and weird, but you did very well. And this morning I asked you if you had any nightmares, and you said no, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't too traumatic. So what is this movie about?
That's how I
It
felt.
is about people fighting a red wizard.
Yeah.
There you go.
And they're all kind of they're thieves, right? And magicians, and they all kind of come together to try and stop this Red Witch and the bad guy named Forge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your favorite? You told me your favorite part of the movie, but what can you tell our friends out there, what was your favorite part about Dungeons and Dragons?
When giant red mist came out and stopped all of the people and made them into red witches.
That's right. And that was why was that your favorite part out of the whole? It was a long movie, huh? So why was that your favorite part of the whole thing?
And because it looked like there was thunder coming out of the sky.
Yeah, like red thunder and kind of smoke, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have another part that you really enjoyed?
It's basically the same thing. There was 2 parts.
Yeah, what was because they did that thing with the red smoke and
arena.
store. Yeah, in the arena. So yeah, there was 2 parts with it's called a callback, where they have a scene early in the movie and then they
Like when
refer to it later.
all the fans gathered.
Get to watch the big fight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They kind
No, all the fans gathered in not the arena, the center where they did that trick.
yeah, that was the arena.
No, not the arena. The the takeoff.
The takeoff. What?
It was half arena.
Half arena. Okay.
It was the one where the big skeleton did that trick.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I think we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Luke, would you recommend people go see Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why?
And because it's so cool.
So cool. Yeah, I think it's cool too. If there was, because you asked me about it, if we could bring Dungeons and Dragons home at some point, and I said we'll have to wait a while till it comes on video. If there was a second one, would you go see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we bring the whole family?
Yeah.
Was it kind of amazing that we took your brother and he actually liked the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he doesn't like movies very much, does he?
Yeah.
Yeah. you like movies, huh?
Yeah.
We'll bring your brother around
Yeah.
one of these days.
Yeah.
All right, well, buddy, thank you again.
Great.
Yeah.
When you asked what is this movie about, I knew if he would be truly your son if he would have said about 2.5 hours. He's not there yet. He's not there yet. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Ian, I have expected you to say, Luke, next week we're going to be talking about mise en scene.
No.
Yeah, exactly. He's like,
that's
that's
a callback.
That's called a callback,
and he's like,
foreshadowing. In fact, I think I made you write 500 words on that just 2 days ago.
When he can write a little more, he'll be writing essays on foreshadowing, I promise.
There you go.
But no, yeah. So yeah, thank you for indulging me in that. And thank you for talking Dungeons and Dragons. This is a lot of fun, and we're gonna be talking about next week, a week from tonight, actually, after the Mandalorian episode 7 review, Super Mario Brothers, a movie that I saw with the family yesterday. So you'll get to hear Luke's thoughts on that too. But I gotta say, there is a thematic cohesion between the movie we talked about tonight and the movie we're going to talk about next week, in terms of being these bonkers kind of like fantasy adventures that are based on IPs. But and I know the critical consensus has been kind of negative on Mario Brothers, but I'm in the opposite camp. So spoilers for my views on next week. Mark, what are you going to say?
I would just like to say that I am all for. And I know people feel divided about them, but I didn't play much of the Uncharted movies, but I still had fun with it.
Yeah.
I even had fun with was it the Lost Kingdom with it was the rom-com of all things with Channing Tatum and Sandra Bullock.
Right.
That one,
Lost City?
I Lost City. Thank you. I like the Jungle Cruise. I'm liking what we're seeing as the comic book movie saturation has taken to over now at the box office. It's proven we're seeing the return of kind of these fun, a bit out there adventure films that are just a bit ridiculous, but they make it fun to go to the movies because that formula works, and we haven't seen it for a while. And I don't mind the return of it. I mean, granted, Hollywood will always overdo it, but for now, I'm liking this trend of the adventure movie coming back to where you're going for a goal of some sort, and they got to go on a hero's journey of sort. But I like those because they're the type of movies, the original Indiana Jones type films. We just saw it on the big screen for the trivia movie this past weekend. There you go. That was the trivia movie this weekend, was Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I got to see it in the mega screen. Fun adventure movies. Those are fun. The Mummy. There's a reason why Brandon Fraser's The Mummy, people still love that movie because it's a grand adventure movie. And I'm all for it. If they're going to do stuff like this, like Dungeons and Dragons, and from what it sounds like Mario Brothers, I'm all for it. Movies that can put seriousness in, but not take themselves too seriously. But at the same time, you still have fun. It's not like over jokey, like, ha, 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 look at this joke.
It really is. Yeah, there's a contrast between like early Marvel and late stage Marvel. I feel like we're getting a lot more early Marvel in the movies that are not tied to Marvel, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, I'm gonna let you all go. Thank you very much for talking D&D Honor Among Thieves. Mark, I'm glad to hear that that the fans of the game are fans of the movie.
Everyone I've talked to. Sorry, didn't mean to step over you. Yeah, everyone I've talked to who are fans of the game are like, yeah, this is the movie they wanted because it felt like they were sitting down and playing the adventure.
So it's the upside, the bright side of fan service.
It is actually, yes.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, guys. I'm Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, Jeff York of The Establishing Shot, and Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of Spoiler Room. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week, 8 o'clock Central, talking about Mandalorian, and then after that, we'll be talking Mario Brothers. Look for those live stream notices, in your, I don't know, on this channel soon, I guess. But until next time, thank you. I'm gonna roll some dice, and I didn't time that right because I didn't end the